Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons in its 42nd year of history, the year 2015. And we're going to talk about 2015 through the filter of clear: catalyst, location, entity, artifact, and relationship. So who is the catalyst for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2015? Well, he is a gentleman by the name of John Harper. John Harper is he's almost like the perfect template for modern tabletop role-playing game design as far as how you build a career, okay? The arc of how to become a game designer, how to practice your skills, how to arrive on the TRPG scene. So this is kind of important because one, a lot of tabletop role-playing game people come into the industry through Dungeons & Dragons or want to come into the industry through Dungeons & Dragons. There are literally thousands of people who want to design for Dungeons & Dragons, and there's less than 100 slots. I don't even think there's even 60 slots. I think there's about 50 people that work on Dungeons & Dragons professionally, and that's a conservative number. That's actually a liberal number. That's a high number. It might not even be that high, right? So there's really way more people that want to design for Dungeons & Dragons than there are available slots, right? And so with that said, many people come into tabletop role-playing game design through other games, right? And John Harper is pretty much a perfect example of modern game design. Very similar in many ways to Adam Cobell, but he has a different path, and he does some things that Adam Cobell doesn't do. So one of the things is, what is he known for? So he came up, he did some free, small, very small, limited scope games like Lady Blackbird, Ghost Lines, Lasers and Feelings. He actually built this super strong template of miniature, scaled down, minimalist tabletop role-playing games, which are absolutely beautiful, and they were like a siren song to the indie community. Not a lot of people have seen these or played these. Lady Blackbird got some traction, but overall they're pretty, they're a little off the grid, right? But one of the things is, so John Harper really built his skills with these small games. Really built them all from the ground up, really showed what can be done with a minimalist tabletop role-playing game design. And then he coalesced everything he had learned in tabletop role-playing games into Blades in the Dark. And Blades in the Dark you see Blades in the Dark coming out, right? And Blades in the Dark is incredibly important because Blades in the Dark does some things that D&D didn't, right? So one, Blades in the Dark is kind of like a gothic steampunk setting with supernatural elements, and it's a really powerful game. But one of the things it does is it brings mechanics for running groups, right? It has group mechanics, not just player character mechanics, but group mechanics. And once you've seen it, you're like, why doesn't every tabletop role-playing game on Earth have this? It's really, really strong, and it's true innovation, right? Now, the way you arrive at and it's a system set. It's a system setting, right? So the rules are so strong that Forged in the Dark is becoming the Blades in the Dark rules are being referred to as Forged in the Dark, and those are games that are built with the Blades in the Dark rule set. And there's multiple of those coming out. Scum and Villainy is the latest, but there's a few of them, right? And so that's a big deal too. If your rule set inspires other creators to create worlds using your rule set, that's a great sign. It's a really good sign, right? Especially if it goes on consistently for a long time. Powered by the Apocalypse is a perfect example of this, right? And Forged in the Dark is another one, right? So John Harper is a really, really important designer. And also, to be clear, John Harper has a direct connection to some of the designers on the design team in Dungeons & Dragons. So without exception, actually, this has already been quoted on many interviews, his work is looked at by direct D&D designers. So John Harper has a very direct impact. When he designs a game, you can bet some or all of the designers on the table on the Dungeons & Dragons design team are going to write it, and some of those ideas you're going to be seeing in the next edition of Dungeons & Dragons. That's my prediction. But without a doubt, it's already talked about that, D&D designers actually read his work and see the material, see the ideas that he's bringing forward. So his influence is direct. There's no two ways about it, or it's dotted line direct. That's the best way to put it, right? But the other thing, but one of the things that's really interesting about John Harper is he just shows a path into, not everybody can come up through D&D. Here's another way to build your chops as a tabletop role-playing designer. He's really super talented and just delivers for the TRPG community as a whole. All right, so what is our location for the year 2015? Our location is Hong Kong, China, right? Now, China is a big question mark when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons. Without a doubt, Dungeons & Dragons has been played in China, right? One, it is challenging to get information about Dungeons & Dragons in China because China controls what its people are and are not allowed to say about the government, about their living situation there. And so China is not as free and open with allowing communications as many other nations, and that affects everything, including about information about Dungeons and Dragons. So the best discussion of this I had ever heard was a dungeon master who now lives in Canada, who had played in China fairly recently, and the way he explained Dungeons and Dragons in China is that there was a 3rd edition language conversion, so it was possible to get the D&D books in China, but that is not the case with 5th edition. So right now, to my knowledge, and according to what this Canadian DM who spoke on this at length, who is also Chinese, said was that right now with 5th edition, there's no official conversion. So right now, 1 billion people live there, and they have no official ability to play Dungeons & Dragons. That's a huge problem, right? Of course, right? So you have this issue overall. In addition, the DM also explained that in China, one, it's going to be fine. It's going to be hard to even find the dice, right? So essentially, there really aren't. They don't have FLGSs the way every other country would have FLGSs, and they also certainly not spread out throughout the nation. Right, and then also, so it's going to be more difficult to get the books. It's going to be more difficult to get the dice, and then in addition to that, the DM said culturally, right, that China overall still sees games as something children do, and so it's not the way that like Americans saw comic books as children's literature in the 70s and 80s, right? So there's still that way. There's still a significant number of people in China that believe, games are like, once you're out of high school, you're not really going to spend a lot of time playing games, right? And so it's a cultural difference for China overall. So that's one of the issues, and that's a significant issue. So China remains as one of the areas where the growth of Dungeons & Dragons could be immense, right? And right now, there's not a lot of signs that China has really a robust Dungeons & Dragons community. That's an area of growth for Dungeons & Dragons overall. All right. So who is our entity for the year 2015? Well, our entity for the year 2015 is Conor McGregor, and he is an MMA mixed martial arts featherlight boxer, right? And also, well, boxer is the wrong word. He's a mixed martial artist, right? And he is a world-class competitor, right? Also, the reason why we're mentioning him here is mixed martial arts has greatly surpassed boxing. Boxing, which used to be really, really huge, really has fallen on the wayside, both domestically in America and internationally. And mixed martial arts has really stepped into that gap, right? And mixed martial arts. Also, of course, because of Dungeons & Dragons, most Dungeons & Dragons are absolutely interested in different forms of combat, and mixed martial arts is, without a doubt, the most successful combat entertainment on the planet. There's no question of that today, right? Where people are actually doing combat rather than something else, right? So with MMA is a huge push, both domestically and internationally. And it really changes the way people look at combat entertainment, right? And Conor McGregor is at the very tip of that. Excuse me. All right, so with that said, what is our artifact for the year 2018? Well, our 2015. What is our artifact for the year 2015? Well, our artifact is the 5th edition Player's Handbook, okay? All right, so the 5th edition Player's Handbook is, of course, a huge deal. With the 5th edition Player Handbook, we see the game of 5th edition, fully actually arriving, right? Arriving. And with that game, what we're looking at is, with the Player's Handbook, we're looking at the edition, the first of the 3 core rule books for the edition that is more self-aware than any other edition, right? So you have 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, all of those, 1E, of course, was, hey, Dungeons & Dragons is new. 2E was, let's improve Dungeons & Dragons. 3E was, here's Dungeons & Dragons, and we're inviting everyone to play. 4E was Dungeons & Dragons. Oh, no, we got it wrong. And then 5th edition was, we are aware of what has happened with 4 different editions of Dungeons & Dragons. We have taken the time to build this very, very carefully. More thought and care and a holistic approach to design went into 5th edition than any other edition. All right, so, like, for instance, one of the things you look at when you look at the edition of 5th edition, the rules are a major concern, right? They were very careful to make sure that things were balanced, that they improved mistakes that people had told them, this is a mistake in the game, players and dungeon masters, and even other designers from other games that remarked on, right? Thousands of articles. And Mike Morales and his team did the best they could to kind of coalesce that information and build a strong rule set. In addition to that, layout, right? Just like clarity of, can the print be seen on the background for the paper, right? What are our margins? Like, incredible attention to detail on the layout of the books. And then art, okay? Here we're seeing an approach to the art in Dungeons & Dragons that is unlike anything that's ever been seen. We need an exciting picture of a dragon. We need somebody in armor. We need somebody with a sword. But, oh, wait. Maybe all these people shouldn't be dudes. Maybe there should be some females, and maybe we should pay attention to how their armor looks. And, oh, maybe there should be some people of color in this book. And, when they came to the art, there was a lot more concern than, does this look cool, right? It was really very socially and culturally aware, right? And this is a mature approach to design for Dungeons & Dragons, where the rules are not the only concern. And some cool art pieces, that's not where the concern ended. There was incredible concern over balance, over prose, over every single word that went into the book, over every single image, right, that goes into the book. People are realizing this is incredibly important. Hundreds of thousands, if not low, millions of copies of this book will be printed. And this book will be here between 5 and 10 years, right? Maybe some people think it might be longer. I highly doubt any edition of D&D will ever go more than 10 years in going forward. I don't think any edition of Dungeons & Dragons will ever last more than 10 years. So with that said, the 5th edition of the Player's Handbook is truly unique and truly, again, just an approach to game design, the likes of which, as far as how holistically the whole thing is approached, how carefully the whole thing is approached, how much thought goes into every different aspect of the game. It's unparalleled. It's never, ever been done at this level before. So what is the relationship for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2015? Well, Dungeons & Dragons has a relationship to mathematics, all right? So this is not a small thing. So, for instance, you will hear many players, one of the things that many players love is that Dungeons & Dragons has falling damage, right? And I just read a post recently where people were talking about, how much is crunch and fluff. And there are people, they say, okay, listen, if your character falls 30 feet how much damage do they take? If you don't have a sound answer for that, some people won't even play your game, right? And Dungeons & Dragons set that. They said, okay, when you get hit with a sword, you're going to take a specific amount of damage, right? And we take that for granted in some games, but because the indie scene has been so successful, and the indie scene walked away from many of the tenets of Dungeons & Dragons, the fact that Dungeons & Dragons very, very strongly embraces mathematics is a big aspect of the game, and it's important to the game, right? It is a solidification of the relationship between Dungeons & Dragons and mathematics. For instance, a fireball, right, that has a range that is in exact feet. It has a duration that is in exact seconds, right? It does damage that is very exact, and as far as, like, you know, the number of dice it will do, and it is scaled per level, right? The mathematics in a fireball alone are significant. There are separate sets of mathematics for every player character. There are separate sets of mathematics for monsters. There are separate sets of mathematics for dungeons. There are people then who go further than that, and earlier editions of the game had mathematics for strongholds and keeps and different things like that, right? So mathematics is really deeply tied to Dungeons & Dragons. And it's a big deal because it says, hey, the numbers matter. We are telling a story here, but we're not telling a story the way you would tell a story in a novel, right? If the dice come up one way, that's the way the story goes, and that's a number. It's a number determining, it's a random number determining the path of the story, right? And then also it's saying you must have some mathematics skill, some proficiency to play this game. It's a bold declaration, and it really sets Dungeons & Dragons apart. That is a clear history of the 42nd year of Dungeons & Dragons history, the year 2015, right? I'm curious, have you ever played any of John Harper's games? Also, what was your take on the 5th edition Player's Handbook? What was your story when you got the Player's Handbook? So when I was super excited. I had been reading the play tests for 2 years before the 5th edition Player's Handbook arrived, and I was at Otakon. I was at an anime convention in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was walking, and I should have been happy, and I would I'm here surrounded by all my anime friends, and I see a dude walk past with a 5th edition printed handbook, and I was like, oh my gosh, it released, right? I got super upset because I do not like I had pre-ordered, and I'm like, this drives me crazy. When I pre-order, I see people get it before me. It was crazy. So so that was like my 5e PHB story. I of course did get my copy, and it was very exciting. So that is but I'd love to hear your story for the 5e PHB. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful day.